Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel on Mir Hashem today. We will be learning Daf Nun Beis Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on the top line of Nun Beis Amid Beis, Siman Reish Ayin Gimel Sif Dalet. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael, Hanasuna Batzara Bashivya, Ha'imdim Bein Bayom Ubein Bayabasha, Hamakayim Yerachem Aleihem V'Yitziam Mitzar L'Lervacha Me'afel L'Ira U'Mishibed L'Geula Hashta Bagala V'Zman Kariv V'Neimar Amen. Our learning should also be a schus for Shalema for Tzvi ben Leah Miriam. It should also be a schus for Yisrael ben Rachel, Yonasan ben Michal, and Yoel ben Michal. So we're here in Siman Reish Ayin Gimel, and we've been discussing the halachas of Kiddush b'makom Suda. Now we've learned that the requirement of Kiddush b'makom Suda is v'karasa l'Shabbos oinig. In order to be yoitza your chiyuv of Kiddush, Kiddush has to be tied to a Suda. The karasa l'Shabbos, you will proclaim Shabbos oinig. It has to be done b'makom oinig. It has to be done in the same location, and it has to be done together with the oinig of Shabbos, which is the Sudas Shabbos. Now, here in Sif Daled, the Mechaber is going to be discussing the question of one person being moitzi another person in Kiddush. Now, let's take a step back for a moment. We have a general rule in halacha, which is that one yid can be moitzi another yid in a birchas hamitzvos, even if the one making the bracha is not being yoitza that mitzvah right now. So, for example, let's say it's Rosh Hashanah. It's Rosh Hashanah. There's a chiyuv of tekiyah shofar. Everybody has to hear shofar. Now, let's say Ruvain already heard shofar. So Ruvain was already yoitza the mitzvah of shofar. Ruvain also happens to be a Baal Tekeah. Now we have Shimon. Shimon did not yet hear shofar. So Shimon still has a chiyuv to hear shofar. All right, so Shimon comes to Ruvain and says, Ruvain, you have your shofar on you. Maybe you could blow shofar for me? Ruvain says, sure, no problem. Okay, somebody has to make the bracha. The halacha is that Ruvain can make the bracha, and he could be moitzi Shimon in the bracha, despite the fact that Ruvain is not being yoitzi the mitzvah now. So Ruvain's going to make a bracha, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivanu l'shmaya kol shofar. Now, he doesn't have a chiyuv to hear shofar. He already heard shofar. He already disposed of his chiyuv to hear shofar. So how's he making a bracha? How are you making a bracha asher kiddishanu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivanu on a mitzvah that you did already? Yet the halacha is that you can do that. Now it happens to be that in this particular case, when it comes to the mitzvah of shofar, we learned in Hilchos Rosh Hashanah that really lechatchila Shimon should make his own bracha. If Shimon knows how to make the bracha, Shimon lechatchila should make his own bracha. But that's lechatchila, and we're going to come to that later in today's shir. But certainly the halacha is that if Ruvain would make the bracha and have in mind to be moitzi Shimon with the bracha, and Shimon listens to the bracha and has in mind to be yoitza the bracha, that is acceptable. It works. Now the question is, how does that work? Why does that work? Why does it work that Reuven could make a bracha on a mitzvah that he was already yoitza to be moitzi another person? And the answer is that this is based on the concept of arvus. What's the concept of arvus? The concept of arvus is that every yid has a shared responsibility with every other yid to see to it and to help facilitate that every yid should be able to be mekayim the mitzvahs that he has a chiyuv to be mekayim. So that means if Ruvain was already yoitza the mitzvah of shofar, but Shimon was not, the concept of arvus says that Ruvain carries a certain level of responsibility to help Shimon be mekayim the mitzvah. And since that's true, Ruvain could make the bracha on shofar to be moitzi Shimon, even though Ruvain was already yoitza. Why? Because even though he was already personally yoitza his own chiyuv of shofar, but he carries a responsibility to help and assist Shimon in helping Shimon be mekayim the mitzvah. Since Shimon wasn't mekayim the mitzvah yet, there is a certain obligation that still rests on Ruvain when it comes to the mitzvah of shofar, and therefore he could make a bracha. Okay, now the same holds true by Kiddush. By Kiddush, everybody has a chiyuv, zachar yom Shabbos lekatjoy. Everybody has a chiyuv to make Kiddush. So let's say Ruvain already made Kiddush Friday night. He could still make Kiddush to be moitzi somebody else who did not yet make Kiddush. He could make Kiddush and be moitzi that other person. So now, let's imagine a certain scenario. We've learned this halacha of ein Kiddush ela b'makom suda. Let's say Reuven and Shimon are coming home together from shul. And Shimon lives on the way to Reuven's house. So Reuven and Shimon leave shul. They walk up to Shimon's house, and Shimon says, "Why don't you come in for a minute?" Reuven comes into Shimon's house. Shimon is about to sit down to his suda, and Shimon says, "Reuven, maybe make Kiddush for us." Now, in this scenario, Reuven was not yet Yotze Kiddush. However, there's another problem. Reuven has absolutely no intent to be Yotze the mitzvah of Kiddush in Shimon's house. Reuven knows that he's going home, that he has a Shabbos Suda at home, that his wife has a table set at home. He knows that he's going to go home, he's going to make Kiddush at his own Shabbos table, at his own Shabbos Suda, and he's going to make Kiddush and eat the Shabbos Suda in his own house. He's not going to sit down and eat a Suda in Shimon's house. So now, yet, he could make Kiddush and be Moitzi Shimon, but he's not going to eat here. So he's not going to have Kiddush b'makom suda in Shimon's house. Says the Mechaber, the halacha of Arvus tells us that Reuven could make Kiddush in Shimon's house. He could have kavanah to be Moitzi Shimon, despite the fact that he is not going to be Yotze Kiddush over here in Shimon's house. Not only that, he's not even really going to be mekayim the requirements of Kiddush, because he's not going to make Kiddush b'makom suda. He's not going to eat a morsel. He's not even going to drink the wine. He's going to say Yom HaShishi, Vayechulu, Bar Priagofen. He's going to make the bracha shekidushanu b'mitzvahs of Aratz Avanu. Then he's going to put down the kais. Shimon's going to take a kais. Shimon's going to drink the wine. He's going to make sure to drink a malei lugmav. And then Shimon is going to go wash, and Shimon's going to eat a suda. You know what Reuven's going to do? Nothing. He's not going to drink wine. He's not going to eat. He's going to go home, and he's going to make Kiddush at home. Why does this work? It works because of Arvus. Since I share a responsibility, Reuven shares a responsibility together with Shimon to help Shimon be mekayim his mitzvah, that Arvus allows Reuven to make Kiddush for Shimon. Reuven's not having Kiddush b'makom suda. Yeah, but Shimon is. Shimon, after he's Yotze Kiddush, is going to wash, he's going to sit down, and he's going to make a Suda. So Shimon's going to have Kiddush b'makom Suda. Reuven's not drinking Yayin. Shimon is drinking Yayin. And Shimon's going to make sure to drink a malei lugmav. So all the requirements of Kiddush are going to be met. They're going to be met by Shimon. Shimon's going to drink a share of Kiddush. Shimon's going to have Kiddush b'makom Suda. Reuven's not going to, but that's okay. Essentially, it's no different than the scenario that I gave you on Rosh Hashanah. Reuven was already Yotze the mitzvah of shofar. Shimon was not Yotze the mitzvah of shofar. Reuven could make a bracha on shofar in order to be Moitzi Shimon. And Shimon will go hear shofar. And Shimon will be Yotze the mitzvah of shofar. So Reuven can make a bracha for him. So too over here. Reuven's not going to have Kiddush b'makom suda. Reuven's not going to drink a malei lugmav of Yayin. He's not going to drink any Yayin. But Shimon is. And therefore, Arvus says that Reuven could make the bracha. Now, there's a fly in the ointment over here. And I'm giving you a little bit of a heads up of what we're going to see inside. The fly in the ointment is this. So far, we've been talking about Birchas HaMitzvahs. Now, let's step away from Birchas HaMitzvahs for a moment. By Birchas HaMitzvahs, we understand how this works. It works based on the concept of Arvus. I could make a bracha on you being mekayim a mitzvah. Why? Because I share a responsibility with you to help you being mekayim the mitzvah. Let's step away from Birchas HaMitzvahs. Let's go to Birchas HaNenin. You want to have a drink of water. You need to make a shahakal on your drink of water. Can I make a shahakal for you? I'll make a shahakal. I'll have in mind to be mitzi you in the shahakal. You'll listen to my shahakal. You'll have in mind to be yotzva, the brach of shahakal, and you'll drink water, and I won't. Does that work? The answer is that we learned earlier in Hilchos Brachas that does not work. By Birchas Hanenin, you cannot do this. Why not? The answer is because Arvus does not apply to Birchas Hanenin. You have no chiv to drink water. You want to drink water, and if you drink water, you need to make a bracha. But who said you have to drink water? Don't drink water. I don't have Arvus to help you drink water. I don't, by shofar, I have Arvus to help you be yotzei the mitzvah of shofar. So I can make the bracha of shofar for you. By Kiddush, you have a chiv of Kiddush. I have Arvus in your chiv of Kiddush. So I can make the bracha of Kiddush for you. But by drinking a cup of water, you don't have a chiv to drink a cup of water. If you don't have a chiv to drink a cup of water, I don't have Arvus to help you drink a cup of water. Now, it's true, if you're going to take a drink of water, you have to make a shackle. But don't take a drink of water, you won't need a shackle. So Arvus does not allow me to make a Birchas Hanenin for you. Now, the problem is that when we deal with Kiddush Friday night, we're dealing with a bracha of Bar Priagofen, which is a Birchas Hanenin. We're also dealing with a bracha of Kiddush. Now, the bracha of Kiddush, I understand how Arvus works. I can make the bracha of Kiddush for you, even though I'm not going to be yotzei Kiddush now, because you have a chiv of Kiddush. Arvus says, I have a shared responsibility to help you be mekayim your chiv of Kiddush. I can make the bracha for you. But how about the Bar Priagofen? The Bar Priagofen is a Birchas Hanenin. How can I make the Hagofen for you while I'm not going to drink any wine? Because that's the halacha that we're going to see. The halacha is, I can make Kiddush with you, for you. I can make the Bar Priagofen. I can make the bracha of Kiddush. I don't have to drink any wine. I don't have to have Kiddush b'makom suda. Why? How do I get away with making a Birchas Hanenin of Bar Priagofen and not drinking wine? I'm making the Bar Priagofen for you, not for me. I'm not going to drink any wine. How am I allowed to do that? The answer the Mechaber is going to explain, and we're going to see it in the Mishnah Berurah, is that the Bar Priagofen of Kiddush, we're not looking at it as a Birchas Hanenin. We're going to look at the Bar Priagofen of Kiddush as being a Birchas HaMitzvah. So we discussed this a little bit earlier on in the halachas of Kiddush, and that is that the Bar Priagofen is an intrinsic part of Kiddush. Kiddush requires the Bar Priagofen. So we're going to elevate that Bar Priagofen to the status of a Birchas HaMitzvahs. And we're going to say that the same way Arvus allows me to make the bracha of Kiddush for you, even though I'm not being yotzei Kiddush now, I could also make the Bar Priagofen of Kiddush for you, even though I'm not going to drink yayin. Okay, that's going to take us through most of today's share. Let's see the halacha inside. Top line at Beis, Amid Beis, Siman Reisha, and Gimel Sif Daled. Says the Mechaber, Yachal Adam lekadesh la'acherim. A person could make Kiddush for other people, and he could be mitzi them, even though he's not going to eat now. He's not going to eat together with them. Now, if he's not eating together with them, so for him it's not Kiddush b'makom suda. So he's not being yotzei Kiddush. So how can he make Kiddush for them? He can make Kiddush for them because of Arvus. Says the Mechaber, Dilididhu having makom suda. Because they're going to be yotzei Kiddush b'makom suda. Reuven is making Kiddush at Shimon's house. He's making the Kiddush to be mitzi Shimon. And after Shimon is yotzei Kiddush with Reuven's Kiddush, he's going to wash, he's going to sit down, and he's going to have a suda. So for Shimon, it is Kiddush b'makom suda. Since it's Kiddush b'makom suda for Shimon, Reuven could make that Kiddush. Even though for him, it's not Kiddush b'makom suda. But he's not being yotzei Kiddush now anyway. He's going to be yotzei Kiddush when he goes home. That works. No problem. Says the Mechaber weiter. Even though typically we say, you can't be mitzi somebody in a brach of Bar Priagofen, which is a Birchas Hanenin, if you're not going to drink any wine. Shimon can ask Reuven, listen, Reuven, I want to have a drink of Cabernet. I don't want to make a Hagofen. You make the Hagofen for me. You're not going to drink any wine. I'm going to drink wine. Make the Hagofen for me. Not allowed to do that, because Arvus doesn't allow you to be mitzi somebody else in a Birchas Hanenin. So says the Mechaber, Afal Gav de Beberkas Hayayin, Eina Yachala Hitziacherim Nena Imayim. Even though typically the halacha is you can't be mitzi somebody else in a Bayer Priagafen, which is a Berkas Hanenin, if you're not going to drink wine. Over here by Kiddush, it's different. Kevin the high Bayer Priagafen who chayva Kiddush. Since now we're dealing with the Bayer Priagafen of Kiddush, which is a chiyuv of Kiddush. Kiddush Friday night requires that Bayer Priagafen. So it's an intrinsic part of Kiddush. Kiddush hayayim dami. It's elevated to the level of Kiddush. It becomes a brichas hamitzvahs. V'yachal lo'itziahim afa pi she'einay nene. And therefore he could be mitzi the other people, even though he's not going to drink wine. So the klal hadavar, the halacha that the Mechaber is telling me over here is, you could go make the bar priagafen of Kiddush, the brichas hakiddush of Kiddush, and you could be mitzi other people, despite the fact that you're not going to drink any wine, you're not going to have Kiddush b'makom suda, you're not going to be yotze Kiddush now. It doesn't matter. Arvus allows you to go ahead and make the bar priagafen and the bracha of Kiddush to be mitzi other people, despite the fact that you're not drinking wine and you're not being yotze Kiddush and you're not having Kiddush b'makom suda. Says the Mishnah Berurah Tezayin. Lekadesh la'acherim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, who I did. The same halacha would apply. The lekitanim mutar lekadesh. An adult could make Kiddush to be mitzi kitanim. Afal pisha ena oichel imahem, even though he's not going to eat together with them. Now this is a bigger Kiddush. When Ruvain is making Kiddush for other adults, so we understand how Arvus kicks in. Ruvain has Arvus together with the other adult. The other adult has a chiyuv of Kiddush. Arvus says that Ruvain carries some of that responsibility, therefore he could go make Kiddush and be mitzi them. But how about by Ketanim? Ketanim don't have a real chiyuv of Kiddush, so how is there Arvus? Says the Mishnah Berurah, even in the lack of Arvus, even in this case where you're dealing with Ketanim, where it's hard to say that there's Arvus, they don't really have a chiyuv, you still could do this. Why? Because by Ketanim you have another chiyuv, and that is you have to be mechanik them, your chiyuv of chinuch. Therefore you could make Kiddush on their behalf, even though you're not going to be yotze Kiddush now. You're not going to eat. You're not going to have Kiddush b'makom suda, so you're not going to be yotze Kiddush. But, says the Mishnah Berurah, v'hu she'enam yodim lekadish ba'atzmam, this is only true when they don't know how to make Kiddush on their own, which is exactly what we're going to see very shortly. This whole halacha that we just learned, that Ruvain could make Kiddush for Shimon, even though Ruvain's not being yotze Kiddush now, the Mechaber is going to say that at least lechatchila, that's only true in a case where Shimon doesn't know how to make Kiddush on his own. If Shimon knows how to make Kiddush on his own, Shimon has no business asking Ruvain to be mitzi him, that he should make Kiddush for him when Ruvain is not being yotze Kiddush now. You at your dining room table, for you to make Kiddush for other people is fine, even though they know how to make Kiddush on their own, because you're being yotze Kiddush now. But in a case where you're not being yotze Kiddush now, in a case where we're only doing this based on Arvus, you know what? If the person who's being yotze Kiddush knows how to make Kiddush on his own, he should make Kiddush on his own. He shouldn't ask somebody who's not being yotze Kiddush now to be yotze Kiddush. Ice cut in Zion. The Mechaber said Ruvain could do this even though he's not eating imahem, even though he's not eating with them. Says the Mechaber, there's another point here, and that is this is also true if Ruvain, who's making Kiddush, already made Kiddush, and he was already yotze Kiddush. In other words, the scenario that I gave you was Ruvain and Shimon are walking home from shul, and they pass by Shimon's house first. Ruvain comes into Shimon's house. He's going to make Kiddush for Shimon, despite the fact that he's not going to drink wine, he's not going to eat any food, and then he's going to go home to his own house, and he's going to make Kiddush in his own house, be yotze Kiddush in his own house, drink wine in his own house, and drink and eat food in his own house. Says the Mishnah Berurah, there's another case here, and that is the case that I gave you by shofar. How about if it's the other way around? How about if Ruvain's house came first? Shimon stopped in by Ruvain. Ruvain sat down, he made Kiddush, he washed, he ate a quick suda, he benched, and then he walked Shimon home. When he gets to Shimon's house, Shimon says, hey Ruvain, make Kiddush for me. Now, in this case, not only is Ruvain not going to eat in Shimon's house, not only is he not going to drink wine in Shimon's house, he also was already yotze Kiddush in his own house. Still, Arvus, he could go ahead and make Kiddush for Shimon. Okay, Ois Cotton Yud Ches. The Mechaber said that part of the Chiddush over here is we're talking about a Bar Priyagofen. Bar Priyagofen is a Birchas Hanenin. Usually you can't be mitzi somebody in a Birchas Hanenin if you're not going to partake of the food. Somebody wants to eat an apple, you can't be mitzi him in a Bar Priya Eitz and sit there and not eat anything. If you're going to eat an apple also, you could make a Bar Priya Eitz, take a bite of the apple and be mitzi somebody else in the Bar Priya Eitz, and he could eat the apple also. But if you're not going to take a bite of the apple, you can't be mitzi another person to eat the apple if you're not going to have any of the apple. When it comes to Birchas Hanenin, ein adam mitzi es chaveroi imhu atzmoi einay nena oz. By Birchas Hanenin, one person cannot be mitzi another person if he himself is not going to partake of the food. Because again, there's no arvus over there. There's no arvus. You're not mechuyev to eat an apple. So I have no arvus that helps me facilitate you eat an apple. So I can't make the bracha for you. If I'm eating apple anyway, so fine. So I made a Bar Priya Eitz on my own apple, on my own eating. So then I could be mitzi you could also eat. But if I'm not going to eat from the apple, I can't make a Bar Priya Eitz for you. Rak b'davar shu chayiv. The only time you could be mitzi somebody in a bracha is when the other person has a chiv. Rak b'davar shu chayiv. Kigon kiddush v'kayotzabai. Like kiddush, where Siman has a chiv of kiddush. If Siman has a chiv of kiddush, I, Ruvain, have arvus, and I have a share in his responsibility, in his chiv of kiddush. Therefore, I can be mitzi him with the bracha. Then adam mitzi chaveroi. Then a person can be mitzi somebody else. We learned all of this in Hilchas Brachas previously. Okay, now we go to the Ramah. 4 lines down, middle of the line. Hagah. Says the Ramah, till now we were talking about Friday night Kiddush. Says the Ramah, Va'afilu b'Kiddush shel Yom b'Shachris b'Shabbos motor lasis kain. You could do the same thing Shabbos by day. Shabbos by day also. You could go ahead and you could make Kiddush and be mitzi somebody else in Kiddush, even if you're not going to be Yotze Kiddush now. So you're not going to drink any wine. You're going to make a Bar Priya Gofen. You're not going to drink any wine. You're not going to eat a piece of cake. You're not going to do anything. So you're not going to have Kiddush b'Malka b'Suda. You're not even going to drink wine. You could make Kiddush and be mitzi somebody else. Now, why is Shabbos day a bigger Kiddush than Friday night? So the reason Shabbos day is a bigger Kiddush is because remember, the ikar of Shabbos day Kiddush is simply the Bar Priya Gofen. Everything else that we say, Im Toshiv, Zachar Yom Shabbos Akadshay, Vishamru, Kisheshes, Alkein Berach, that's all ancillary. That's not an ikar part of Shabbos day Kiddush. The ikar of Shabbos day Kiddush, the minimum to be Yotze Shabbos day Kiddush is pick up the kais, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam, Bar Priya Gofen. That's the entire Kiddush. Now, that's why Shabbos day Kiddush is a much bigger Kiddush than Friday night. Friday night, we have a Bar Priya Gofen, which is a Birchas Hanenin, and we have the bracha of Kiddush, Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvahs avarotzavanu. So over there we said, you could make Kiddush for somebody else through Arvus, even though you're not going to be Yotze Kiddush now. The Bar Priya Gofen is a Birchas Hanenin? Well, we said, okay, we're going to elevate the Birchas Hanenin to be part of Kiddush. It's an intrinsic part of Kiddush, so we're going to treat it like a Birchas HaMitzvahs. Shabbos by day, all there is a Birchas Hanenin. That's all there is. The whole Kiddush is only the Bar Priya Gofen. So if you do this, you're mamish being mitzi somebody in a Birchas Hanenin when you're not going to drink any wine, which typically we say you're not allowed to do. And you're not piggybacking it on a Birchas HaMitzvahs. There is no Birchas HaMitzvahs here. There's no bracha of Kiddush, Shabbos by day. So it's a bigger Kiddush. Why does it work? Explains the Mishnah Berurah Cotton Yutes. Va'afilu, Ritzainer Loimar. What the Mechaber wants to say with this afilu is, after Sham, even though over there by Shabbos by day, Kol HaKiddush Hu Rak Bar Priya Gofen Levad, the whole Kiddush Shabbos by day is only Bar Priya Gofen, which is only a Birchas Hanenin. Mikam Okaim, nevertheless, Kevin Dihi Mitzvah, since Shabbos by day, the Bar Priya Gofen is a mitzvah. You have to make Kiddush Shabbos by day. Now, it's true, the whole Kiddush is only the Birchas Hanenin of Bar Priya Gofen, but you're not making it simply as a Birchas Hanenin. You're making it as kiddush. It's a mitzvah. Kevedehi mitzvah. And not only is it a mitzvah, the ikroi niskan shaloi b'shvil hana. The ikar reason you're making this bar priagafen now is not as a berachas hanenin, as a bracha rishona to drink wine. The ikar reason you're making this bar priagafen now is for the mitzvah of kiddush. If anybody comes over to you now and says, what are you doing? You're not going to say, I'm making a bracha rishona on a case of wine. You're going to say, I'm making kiddush. So the whole ikar of this bar priagafen is the mitzvah of kiddush, el mitzvah alav kishar mitzvahs, mishum hachi, moitzi acherim afal bisha einoi nene. Therefore, you can be moitzi somebody with that bari priagafen, even if you don't drink any wine, because it's like being moitzi somebody in l'shmaya b'kol shofar. It's like being moitzi him in a berachas hamitzvahs, arvus. You could be moitzi him through arvus, even though it's a berachas hanenin. Kiddush halayla, just like Friday night kiddush. Now, over here, the Mishnah Berurah is now going to say that you cannot extend this to the hamoitzi on the challah by the Shabbos Suda. In other words, right? Let's you're a paisik and mevin davar mitaych davar. You're trying to compare different halachas. So we just learned the halacha that even though bar priagafen by Kiddush Shabbos by day is only a berachas hanenin, usually we say by berachas hanenin you can't be moitzi somebody else unless you're going to partake of the food. So normally you can't be moitzi somebody in a bar priagafen and let him drink wine if you on yourself are not going to drink wine. But by Kiddush Shabbos morning you can. Why? Because since Shabbos morning there's a chiyuv of Kiddush, so he needs kiddush. He needs a bar priagafen. When I make the bar priagafen, we don't look at it just as a berachas hanenin. We don't look at it as a bracha rishona. We look at it as a berachas hamitzvahs on kiddush, and therefore I can be moitzi you in the bar priagafen even if I don't drink wine. Okay, now let's extrapolate. Somebody comes and asks the following shaila. So we've covered kiddush. Now we sit down to have the suda, and everybody's gonna wash. And the people who are eating the Suda now, they want to eat the Lechem Mishnah. They want to eat Challah. So now they ask you, listen, maybe you could do us a favor. Maybe make Hamoitzi and be Moitzi us in the bracha of Hamoitzi. You're not going to eat Challah. You're going home. You're having your Suda at home. So you're not going to eat any Challah now. Just make Hamoitzi and have kavanah to be moitzi us in the bracha of Hamoitzi, and we're going to have kavanah to be yoitza with your bracha. Could you do us that favor? Could you do that for us? So you might be tempted to say, that's just like the bar priagafen of Kiddush. We let you get away with it by the bar priagafen of Kiddush. Why? Because you said, well, in this case, the bar priagafen is a berachas hamitzvahs. What do you mean they have to make Kiddush? Well, how about the Hamoitzi on the Lechem Mishnah? Why don't we say the same thing? Why don't we say there's a chiyuv of Suda Shabbos? So Shimon and the people sitting around Shimon's table, they have a mitzvah, they have to eat Suda Shabbos. So why can't Ruvain make a Hamoitzi, even though he's not going to eat any challah? But he could make a Hamoitzi through Arvus to facilitate them sitting down and eating their Lechem Mishnah and eating their Shabbos Suda. Sounds like a pretty good comparison. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, that doesn't work. Says the Mishnah Berurah, but this is not similar to the bracha hav hamoitzi on the Lechem Mishnah by the Shabbos Suda. Shall kol shalish sudas, for all three sudas of Shabbos. You cannot be moitzi somebody else in the hamoitzi for the Shabbos Suda if you're not eating challah. Why not? Da'af shehem chayiv, because even though it's true that they have a chiyuv to eat the Shabbos Suda, eina chayiv alav mishum mitzvah. The eating of the Shabbos Suda is not intrinsically a mitzvah. What do I mean by that? There's no intrinsic mitzvah to eat a kazayas of challah. This is not like moitzi matzah Pesach night. Moitzi matzah Pesach night, there's a mitzvah to eat a kazayas of matzah. That's the mitzvah, to eat a kazayas of matzah. Over here, Friday night, there's no, you don't see people sitting there measuring out the kazaysim to be yotzeh the chiyuv of eating a kazayas of challah. That's not the mitzvah. Ela kedei sheyene misuda Shabbos. The mitzvah, the chiyuv of Suda Shabbos is oinig. That's the mitzvah of Suda Shabbos. The mitzvah of Suda Shabbos is to take delight in Shabbos, to have oinig Shabbos, and to have hana from the Suda of Shabbos. The eating of the kezayis of challah itself is not an intrinsic chiyuv. I have to be mekayim the mitzvah of eating a kezayis of challah. No, the mitzvah is to have hana. Generally, the way you have hana is by making hamoitzi on the lechem mishnah and eating a beautiful Suda. But, says the Mishnah Berurah, I'll bring you a raya. Taha imhu nena mimasha misane. Let's say you have somebody who has hana from fasting. Ain't tzarich lechel. The ikar adin, somebody who has enjoyment out of fasting. He doesn't want to eat. He wants to fast. That's what makes him tick. We're going to see later on that technically speaking, he doesn't have to eat. Eating is not a hana for him. Siman Gimel. So it's not a chiyuv to eat the challah. It's a chiyuv of hana. Kiddush is not that way. Kiddush is you have a chiyuv of Kiddush, you need to drink the wine. So Arvus tells me I could make the Bar Priagofen for you even though I'm not going to drink wine because it's like a Birchas HaMitzvahs. But by the Hamoitzi on the challah, it's not that way. You don't have a chiyuv to eat the challah. You have a chiyuv to have hana. So I can't make Hamoitzi for you and not eat challah. That I can't do. That's a regular Birchas Hanenin. I can only make the Hamoitzi for you if I'm also going to eat challah. Al kain ein moitzi acher im eino oichel imoim. So when it comes to the Hamoitzi, you can't be moitzi another person in the bracha of Hamoitzi, even by the Shabbos Suda, unless you yourself are going to eat challah. But, says the Mishnah Berurah, v'em kiddush al hapas. But what about in the case where there's no yayin? So you're making kiddush al hapas. In that case, oz moitzi gam beberchas hamoitzi. Then you could be moitzi the other people in the bracha of hamoitzi, because now it's kiddush al hapas. If it's kiddush al hapas, then the hamoitzi gets elevated to a berchas hamitzvahs, just like the hagofen does when you're making kiddush al hayayin. The high berchas hamoitzi ke berchas bari pri hagofen like kiddush hayayin damya. Okay. So basically, to wrap up what we've seen here so far, we have the concept of arvus. The concept of arvus says that whenever a yid carries an obligation to be mekayim a mitzvah, everybody else has arvus together with him. And the only words I can think to use are, it's like a shared responsibility. The same way he has a chiyuv, I carry a share of his chiyuv. And therefore, I could make a bracha on his behalf, even if I'm not being yoytz in a mitzvah now. Therefore, when it comes to Kiddush, if Shimon has a chiyuv to make Kiddush, Reuven could make the bracha of Kiddush for him, even if Reuven is not being yoytz a Kiddush now. He's not having Kiddush b'makom Suda now. Maybe he already was yoytz a Kiddush. He's not even going to drink wine now. But he could make Kiddush for Shimon because of Arvus. Very big Kiddush that we learned is that this extends even to the Bar Priagofen of Kiddush. Now that's a big Kiddush. Why? Because normally the halacha by Berchas Hanenin, by a bracha Rishona, is I cannot be moitzi you in a bracha Rishona if I'm not eating. I could be yoitzi you in a shahakal. If I'm drinking a tea, and you want to drink a tea, I can make a shahakal on my tea, and I can be moitzi you with the shahakal, and you could drink your tea. But that's because I'm drinking tea. But if I'm not drinking tea, you want to drink tea, and I should make the bracha for you, and I'm not going to drink, that I can't do. Why? Because there's no arvus. What kind of arvus? You don't have a chiyuv to drink a tea. So there's no shared responsibility. I don't have a chiyuv to help you drink a tea. So I can't do that. By Berchas Hanenin, it usually doesn't work. But by the Bar Priagofen of Kiddush, it does work. Why? Because the Bar Priagofen of Kiddush is an intrinsic part of Kiddush. So too, if you're making Kiddush al hapas. If you want to make Kiddush al hapas, I could make the hamoitzi for you and the bracha of Kiddush for you, even though I'm not going to eat bread and even though I'm not being yoytz Kiddush. Because in that case, the bracha of hamoitzi is part of the Kiddush. The same way the Bar Priagofen would have been part of the Kiddush. Arvus, I could be moitzi you. Shabbos by day. The whole Kiddush is only a Berchas Hanenin. It's only Bar Priagofen. I could make Kiddush for you, a Bar Priagofen, even though I'm not going to drink wine. Because that Bar Priagofen is considered a Berchas HaMitzvahs. Hamoitzi over the Lechem Mishnah by the Shabbos Suda, over there I can't be moitzi you unless I'm going to eat challah. Because that's not a Birchas HaMitzvahs. Because there's no intrinsic mitzvah of achilas pas. The real mitzvah of Einik Shabbos is hanoah. It's not achilas pas. So that's not a Birchas HaMitzvahs. Now the Mechaber comes, and the Mechaber puts a caveat on this whole halacha. And that is that the halacha that we've learned until now, where the whole discussion that we're having is Ruvain is making Kiddush for Shimon. Even though Ruvain's not being Yoitze Kiddush now. We said that you could do that. But says the Mechaber, 3 lines off the bottom, near the beginning of the line, V'hu she'enam yoidim. But that's only true when Shimon, the people that are being Yoitze with Ruvain's Kiddush, don't know how to make Kiddush by themselves. That's, if they know how to make Kiddush by themselves, then you can't pull this shtick. If they know how to make Kiddush by themselves, then they shouldn't have Ruvain make Kiddush for them when Ruvain's not being Yoitze Kiddush. If Ruvain's being Yoitze Kiddush, that's fine. But if Ruvain's not being Yoitze Kiddush, he shouldn't make Kiddush for people who know how to make Kiddush. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Chaf. V'hu she'enam yoidim. Dem yoidim l'kadish ba'atzmam. If they know how to make Kiddush themselves, eina yachal lo yitziyah b'kiddush shaloi. Ruvain can't be moitzeh with his Kiddush im eina yoitze az ba'atzmai b'ha-Kiddush when he's not being yoitze Kiddush now. You can't do this when the people who want to be yoitze Kiddush themselves know how to make Kiddush. That's the sheet of the Mechaber. But says the Mishnah Berurah, the Pri Chadash disagrees with this Mechaber. With Sfirah and he holds the Bechol Gavni Yuchal Lo Yitziam. No, the Pri Chadash holds no. You could always do this. Even if Shimon knows perfectly well how to make Kiddush on his own, since Ruvain has Arvus, Ruvain can make Kiddush for Shimon, even though Shimon knows how to make Kiddush, and even though Ruvain's not going to be Yoitze Kiddush now. So what? There's Arvus. Who cares if Shimon knows how to make Kiddush or not? That doesn't lessen the Arvus, so why can't you do it? That's what the Mishnah Berurah brings down here from the Pri Chadash. Ubesefer Artzes HaChaim Siman Ches Masa Gamkein the Medina Yachal Ha'itzi B'Chal Gavni. The Sefer Artzes HaChaim says the same thing. He says, like the Pri Chadash, that Arvus works even if the party that's being Yoitze Kiddush knows how to do it by themselves. Ach lechatchila mitzvah she'ikadosh ba'atzmai. But lechatchila, the one who's being Yoitze Kiddush should make his own Kiddush. Kevin Chubaki, since he knows how. V'gam chaver ha'moitzi and a Yoitze ata ba'Kiddush. And since the one who's actually making the bracha is not going to be Yoitze Kiddush now. So why are you doing this? Why are you doing it? You know how to make Kiddush on your own. He is not being Yoitze Kiddush now. So why are you doing this? Why are you going out on a limb and using Arvis? Don't use Arvis. You make your own Kiddush. And if you look in the Bir Halacha over here, Dibra Maskal Vusha Einam Yoidim, the Chavetz Chaim says in the Bir Halacha also that this Mechaber is really only lechatchila. Lechatchila you shouldn't do this. But the Evid doesn't work? Yes. But the Evid it works because of Arvis. V'yisha almana. Now let's say you have a case like this. You have a woman, Nebuch, who's an almana, and she's home alone. V'yisha almana, she'ena yidas ba'atz ve'ech l'kadish. She doesn't know how to make Kiddush. She never had a Yiddish education. She doesn't know how to read. She doesn't know how to make Kiddush. She's home all alone. What should she do? So somebody might have suggested to the almana, go next door to your neighbor and listen to your neighbor make Kiddush. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Loi tuchal likonis bebayis achal lishmaya Kiddush. She can't just go into somebody else's house to hear Kiddush. Kevin she'ena seyedish ham klal. Because what do you mean? She's not going to have Kiddush b'makom suda. If they don't invite her to eat, she can't just go in there and listen to Kiddush. The balabas who's making Kiddush is going to drink yayin, and now she walks out. She had Kiddush. That's not Kiddush b'makom suda. She didn't have Kiddush b'makom suda. She's not going to eat there. She's going back home. She's going to eat at home. So that's not Kiddush b'makom suda. Kevin she'ena sham klal. Ella, rather, you kanis acher lebeisa lekadish lefaneha. Somebody should go into her house and make Kiddush for her. Now, umahani zeh afshehu eni yoytza ata Kiddush. Somebody should go into the almana's house, make Kiddush in the almana's house in order to be moitzi the almana. The almana will be yoytza with his Kiddush, and she'll sit down and she'll eat Kiddush b'makom suda. The one who made Kiddush, he doesn't have to eat anything. He doesn't even have to drink the yayin. That's the halacha that we just learned. He's not being yoytza Kiddush now. So what? But through Arvus, he's making Kiddush for her. She has a chiyuv in Kiddush. So Arvus, he's making Kiddush for her. He doesn't have to drink wine. He doesn't have to be Yotzei Kiddush. He doesn't need Kiddush B'Makom Suda in the Almana's house. He'll go home. He'll have Kiddush in his own house. And that works fine. Okay, we're going to stop over here. I was going to go a little bit weiter, but we're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time with Sif A. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe Shem should send Yeshua Sephor's Panas and Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeicher to see the B'yas Kol Tzedek. B'mehera v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.